All right, we'll go ahead and kick off. How many do we have online?
We have 8 online.
8 online, great. So I'll read a few comments and then we'll open it up to board comments and then we'll take questions and comments from everyone in the room. Welcome and thank you for participating. We hope that an open dialogue today will help the board fine tune and enhance the current draft of the gate access policy. The goal of this new gate access policy is to create a current, consistent, and fair process for entry through our main gate. We owe our members a thoughtful and consistent approach. I'll highlight that crime or similar dangers were not a driving factor in our development of this policy. The policy we will be discussing today is structured around 3 types of drivers entering through our gates. Those who own here, KICA and KICA owners, along with some exempt Kiwa residents. Those who work here, including member employees, service providers, and municipal workers, and guests of those who own on Kiwa, which can range from guests of private residents to hotel guests to villa rentals to golfers playing for the day. Details of the policy and its implementation include the following. All Kiwa and KICA property owners, as well as commercial service providers, will be provided a KICA-issued radio frequency identification decal for automated entry through the front gate. Centralizing access with KICA is the only way to be consistent across all KICA members and was the process until 5 years ago. A centralized gate access process will provide KICA tools for controlling congestion and to better enforce parking and traffic rules. The changeover will be invisible to the majority of Kiwa owners and commercial gate pass holders. Some Kiwa Island Club members will now require a KICA-issued RFID decal, and we will work to minimize the disruption related to that changeover. For those concerned about the burden of having 2 decals on their car, the Kiwa Island Club is welcome to use its equipment to read the KICA decals, and we'll facilitate that where we can. Guest entry is the trickiest issue. It's probably where we've gotten the most comments. The drafted policy requires all guests to obtain either a daily pass or a pass for the duration of their overnight stay. It is important for KICA directors, those of us sitting here, to understand the level of privacy and security that is expected for Kiwa Island, and I hope we could discuss that further today. Implementation, the draft policy is written in a way that allows the KICA board to set the policy and goals for the organization up front and for staff to implement changes on a schedule that will not disrupt the island. The KICA board is asking staff to work diligently with key partners like the resort and Kiwa partners to design and implement major changes to the front gate. This may include enhancements such as a 3rd lane for entry or an off-site parking pass office. We are considering funds for the 2026 budget. We've actually approved funds to bring traffic and security professionals to assist us with these projects. I see this policy further evolving after the meeting today, and we expect implementation of all goals to require several years to fully implement. And with that, I'll open it up to comments from the other board members and then from our KICA members. Anyone like to add?
I'll make a couple of comments. I basically have 2 observations that I'd like to make. First, I think there is some unnecessary complexity here. So the first, and my 2 comments relate to that complexity. My first comment would be relative to the notion or the definition of guest on page 2. I find this a little confusing and maybe too complex. To me, the idea of a guest is very simple. A guest would be a person specifically invited onto the island, either by a member, capital M, or KICA. That's what I think of when I think about a guest. So that would be one observation, the thought. The other general observation is that most of page 2 and most of page 3 and the top half of page 4 is a very detailed discussion of owner. And residential member. I know that there is some ambiguity in our governing documents relative to owners and members, but for this purpose, I'm not sure that it's the best idea to try to redefine, for purposes of this policy what we mean by owner. Yes, it's a complex subject. We do define in the documents what a resident is, capital R resident. So my second comment is that I wonder if we couldn't rely on the relevant definitions that are existing in our covenants as opposed to making new ones.
Are you through?
I'm sorry?
Are you through with your
Yeah,
comments?
you said you had two.
Those were two.
Oh, those were the two. Okay.
Those were the two.
You know, we've had this discussion internally. We very vehemently dispute your position with respect to overcomplication. You know, we looked at a lot of different gate policies. We looked at the KICA covenants, the general covenants. The definition of owner just doesn't meet with the currently existing ownership structures that are out there. So, you know, we met with various people, including Maura, and one of her biggest concerns was the lack of definition as to how this would apply to our owners. And the definition of owner is fundamental to who our members are. And unfortunately, once you work with a foundation that isn't sufficiently firm, everything that you build upon that is going to be, you know, a mess. And we heard, and I believe that you were one of them, that said, look, we started with residential members, that didn't work. So we went to the actual documents themselves. And I would tell you as a real estate lawyer, you have to be careful when you're talking about fee interest owners as is defined in the KICA covenants as to who essentially a member is. You can't just declare a member because, you know, unfortunately, the definition of member under our organic documents isn't clear. So I believe, you know, contrary to what you say, that this is unnecessarily complicated. If you look at the gate access policy for Sea Pines, it's 55 pages long with 14 different sections. And there were pages upon pages of who is an appropriate guest, who is an appropriate owner. So I think that what we tried to do here is keep it as streamlined as possible, understanding that we're working with 1977 documents that just didn't contemplate, you know, the variety of ownerships that we see. You know, if Bev?
One other point too, and I think we just found a potential error in the we found a potential error in the definition of guests that we left out commercial owners. So I don't know if that helps your concern or not, but you know, and
Is that what you and I talked about earlier?
yeah, so
I got it.
in looking at this, I'm sure there's other typos or maybe other inconsistencies, but we're looking at those and this is a living document we're continuing to work on.
Let's point that out. So guests will now be, shall mean or refer to all desiring access to Kiwa Island through the main gate who are not residential owners, commercial owners, or service providers.
Correct.
Yes.
And there, I think there's a couple other places where we need to add commercial owner when we're talking about guests too, but we'll identify those as we go along.
Yeah, I thought it is complex, but we've had so much back and forth about the definition of owners and who could be a director, who could own property, et cetera, that I think unfortunately it's probably necessary. Paul, what do you think about, the one thing I'll highlight is for everyone in the room, in case they have comments, the 10% on, that was to address some member concerns who were, you know, that there were too many people that might possibly own undeveloped land. I was a little concerned about developed land as well, which a board can come back and fix in the future, but did you have any concerns with that or?
Well, as I think the members of the board know, I think there's a more straightforward way to deal with properties that have multiple or fractional owners through a wide variety of ownership structures. I think my view is there is a simpler, more straightforward way to deal with that. And the undeveloped properties is just a subset of that category.
So you remember though, the genesis of that was we had a flat cap of 10% on all properties.
Yeah.
And we heard from people that because of the fractional ownerships, because of the LLC and the person entities that own property, that wasn't workable. So we applied the 10% to undevelopable property to prevent a scenario, a hypothetical scenario where a limousine company buys a piece of undevelopable swampland and then issues to, all of its clients who want to have a day on the beach, a fractional interest that would be a 1/100th interest in undevelopable property. So that is why this concept is in here. We took it out of the developed property because
Yeah, why not develop? Like I have a house. Why couldn't I, and we talked about this a little in email, but I dropped out, but why couldn't I give 1% to like my 20 college friends?
well, if you look at like the timbers is a fractional interest, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure how,
Yeah, that's a
percentage
good point.
wise, at some point, we're going to ding somebody, even if with 1% are here, frequently, and I'm not sure that, I don't know that there's a pure solution.
Yeah,
This is to avoid an abuse. If you look at St. Simon's gate policy, they talk about giving the board discretion. They have 3 pages of who is known. And then they also say that with respect to any documentation that they require to identify ownership within an entity, i.e. a shareholder, a member, a partner, they have the discretion to view that as a sham conveyance, which I think is giving the board way too much
Yeah,
authority.
yeah.
So,
But the problem is that if there's abuse through a corporate structure, let's say Exclusive Resorts is a corporation that has, 10,000 shareholders and they own properties on the island. So are those 10,000 people owners? So my point is, I don't think the problem is just these like handful of undevelopable lots. I think any owner could, go public theoretically and have thousands of shareholders, and then technically, all those owners would be owners, capital O. I just think there's another more practical way to deal with that broad problem.
well, I would tell you that as an owner, capital O, as defined in our documents, every owner has a right to access our island as an owner. So if we're going to get into and delve into the minutia of ownership as to developed property, I'm telling you that, it's going to get into a situation where we are going to have a real problem drawing the line and being able to administer it on a fair.
And that's where we differ, because I don't think that it requires minutia. I think there's a relatively straightforward to quote unquote combat or deal with abusive behavior designed specifically to give quote unquote the public access to the island. I think there is a solution that is very straightforward and that would be practical and it would work.
so,
What's the
yeah,
solution?
what's the
What is it?
solution?
Sure. So, I think the board has heard this before, but in our documents currently, relating to voting, by the way, and also relating to use of the sandcastle, which is a purchased common property, there is a mechanism that is designed to identify a primary member. And that primary member has access to the sandcastle in that particular example. And then non-primary member, I forget exactly how they're defined, Shannon, but the fractional owners who are not primary members can have access to the sandcastle, or by extension to the road, but in this case, the sandcastle, but they have to pay a fee.
So is it just about money then?
Hang on just a second. So drawing on that comp, we could say for residential properties, all multi-owner residential properties would have an access structure as follows. A designated owner, and the designated owner would get the RFID and unqualified access. All other owners would have two options. They could get an RFID by paying the KICA fee, or they could get guest passes or fractional owner passes that had a fee structure associated with them. So that if you wanted to sell your property to 1,000 people, you could do that. And those 1,000 people would have access to the island legally, but only one person gets an RFID, or more people, but they would have to pay half an assessment.
So you do currently have a fee structure for that, the joint member fee. It does not equate to a KICA access fee, which is currently 50% of a general assessment. But the board does have that mechanism currently related to a joint member fee, and all joint members on properties are paying fees to KICA
So basically,
annually.
so basically my solution, rather than sort of rewriting the definitions in the covenant, would be an economic solution.
I think that respectfully, Paul, as a real estate lawyer, I would tell you that as you start to distinguish within an ownership structure, because our document, our plenary definition is an owner is whoever appears of record on the deed. We need to change that. We haven't. We tried to. What you changed was a mechanism within our bylaws as to who would be an appropriate board person. So we still have to address that. And to the extent that you're going to start to delve into designations of ownership that essentially can't align with our fundamental document, you're opening us up to a huge, huge potential problem. And if three families own a house together as joint tenants or as tenants in common, you're saying you have to identify one person within that joint tenancy or tenancy in common, and they're the only ones that will get the barcode.
We do it now for the sandcastle.
That doesn't matter. In our documents, the primary right in our documents is the granting of an access easement to your property. And use of common area is a secondary right. So if you are going to tell somebody they have a house that they are 1/3 interest owner in, and you're not going to let them through the gate unless they pay 50% of.
No, I'm giving them three options. Number one, as primary owner, they would get an RFID. Number two, as not a primary member, they could have an additional RFID associated with that property at a substantial fee. And option three is some fee structure to be determined. No of those 1,000 owners would be denied access.
And I would never do that.
It's not workable. And I would
Why?
tell you that, well, because you're going to get sued.
Yeah,
Is
well,
why.
and I'm
So-
more worried about
Okay,
that's so, let
my
me
opinion.
tell you, let me, for a second, let me tell you where I get, so I have two concerns, and one mitigant. Well, I guess I have primarily one concern. Let me wait till that's. I would actually scratch the word non-developable, because I do think this could apply, it should apply equally across everyone.
Absolutely.
So that's something I think, that would be my only comment, is scratch the word non-developable. But I will say, then we see how it goes. Because this is not a covenant amendment. This is a board policy. So if we get 6 months into this and we find people are not, are doing things that we never dreamed of, like we have unintended consequences, it's pretty easy for the board to change this in one board meeting. So I do take some, like, rather than try to get it perfect today, I think that we can put this down, see how it goes for 6 months. And if we find somebody suddenly, syndicating their dock to 100 people, we can step in and find a way to fix that would be my recommendation to move forward. But I personally think we should pull non-developable just because I think any property
Yeah,
could, you know,
of
the
course.
Timbers could sell 200 additional membership rights if they wanted.
And if they did, I guess my concern is we're affecting a potential amendment through a policy. And that's, we've got to understand that,
Yeah.
you know, they have to align.
Yeah.
But
But I don't, that said, I don't have a big problem with, because we are trying to get something out there, live with it, keep growing, keep changing it, keep amending it if we see problems.
We're assuming somebody's gonna try to game the system. We hope they don't.
Yeah.
If they do, we can address it in the
Yeah.
future.
That's
Right.
kind of where I come down.
Right, and while the policy may seem involved at this point, I think what you're suggesting may become an administrative burden for staff to try, because they'd have to go through to all RFID owners and have them indicate who the designated owner is. Because it would apply to everyone who has a trust or any type of ownership other than fee simple.
And to your point, Shannon, you've looked at how we've designated this, and you say that you could implement it the way that we've defined owner currently.
What else? Other board member comments, or Paul, I think you said. Dwight, is Dwight on the phone? Anything? Dad?
Dwight is on the phone.
Okay, you want to go to, should we go take some comments and questions from the, do you have your hand up? Please. We can always circle back.
Come on up.
If you could, grab the mic and just let us know your, name and address and feedback.
My name is Glenn Barlow. My address is 194 Sanderling Court. And this is my 46th year of my life of living all or part of it on Kiowa. One thing that I want to mention is that my hearing is not great and my vision is not great. But I still have an interest in what goes on here every day. I haven't been able to hear clearly anything any of you have said so far. I wish I could. But if the microphones are turned on your head table, they aren't doing a hell of a lot because I could hear very, very little. I assume that you are talking about access to the island because that's what I understood was the case. I hate to relate this, but this year has not been a good year for us. We typically spend almost 3 months out of the summer at our old family homestead in Vermont, which is 1,000 miles from Kiowa. When we leave, we've been assured that things will be great on Kiowa and we don't have to worry about anything. We're behind 2 security gates and we know that there is some measure of security with people who are neighbors, friends who might just stop by to check on the house and so on. But this year was different. We didn't learn of this until we returned at the end of the first week in September. But in this case, we found out, and I can't go into all the detail or this meeting will last too long. We found out that there were a large number of people who have gained access to our house. A large number, 1, 2, no. We have found out that they used every bed in our house. There were 12 people living in our house. They did so for the better part of 6 weeks. I can't begin to tell you the mess that they made and what an invasion of privacy this was for Joan and I. They did one thing good. They took all the trash away. They left no evidence in trash. However, our refrigerator and our cabinets were full of their spices, their sauces, their soups, their shampoos, you name it. Dozens of pieces of merchandise which they have used over their stay. They also left several articles of clothing, which we did not keep, I can tell you. But they also went up, I can't believe this, but they went up in our attic where we store records for the last 50 years. And everything was labeled by year and so on, contents. They opened every box and they were all the same size of file boxes like you've all seen. They opened every box, turned it over, and dumped the contents on the floor. You can't walk through our attic without stepping on 10 to 12 inches of paper. What a mess. They also destroyed several things in the house. Our dishwasher,
Sir,
coffee maker.
could I kindly ask you to bring it back to our gate access policy that we're discussing
Yes,
today?
I'm getting to that. And so my first reaction when we discovered this was because our pool boy, who has been servicing our pool for a number of years, and the day after we returned, he came to do the pool service in September for that week. And he said to Joan, he said, I hope that your family had a great time when they were here this summer. To which Joan said, my family? My family wasn't here this summer. He said, well, there were a lot of people here. He said, there were 5 cars in your driveway when I came to service the pool. And he said there was a crew cab black pickup, there was a reddish Toyota van, and 3 other cars. And he said, and there were people running all over the place. They were having a great time. He said, I thought they were family, so I turned around and there was no way for me to get in to service the pool. He said, but as I was wandering around and trying to decide my next course of action, he said, I noted that at least 3 of the vehicles had Kodak issued gate passes on their front windows or on their dashboard of the cars.
And you reported this, I think, to Shannon.
To the police. CTSO, Charleston County Sheriff's Office is involved, Glenn? I'm sorry, I'll speak closer to the mic. Charleston County Sheriff's Office is involved in this matter, I believe.
I'm sorry,
It's okay, Glenn.
yeah, oh, yes,
Yes,
the
Yeah,
first thing I
that
Thank
may
you,
be
Roger.
beyond the scope
was
of
to
what we
call,
can
I
help with.
called the sheriff, yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
probably
sir.
beyond what we can help with here today.
And I also talked to the young man at the KICA office.
with security. Daryl,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the young man who was responsible for taking complaints. I
Yes.
gather. He
you
said
spoke
he-
with Daryl.
He couldn't do anything about it except note the fact and perhaps having one of the security vans make a swing by and check.
Yes,
everything.
I believe they're doing house checks
Yeah,
for you.
Could I offer maybe outside of this meeting, that you could meet with our security team again And maybe that would be more
I'll do
helpful.
whatever you ask.
Yeah, I think this is, we're talking about a policy for how to issue,
Okay.
member passes.
Well, the one thing I could not provide or be provided with was any information on the vehicles or therefore the people that were there.
And that's one thing we'd like to fix and have a better
Except they
handle
were
on. Yeah,
allowed to
that,
come on
Yeah.
Kiwa.
yeah, we are today working. We're trying to make sure that everyone comes to the gate.
Okay.
If we have their policy, we have their
Well, I
license plate.
couldn't hear what you've been talking about, so I only assumed that
Sure,
you would hear what I had to say.
got it.
And I'll be here. I won't leave. If anybody wants all the details, I've got them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And for the board, if you pull your mics closer, it will
Yeah.
pick up more in the room so that Glenn can hear.
Yeah, and we are videotaping this if you want to
Yeah.
watch it at home.
Carol Medendorf, Parkside, going on with kind of what Paul was talking about, and you were all talking about with numbers. Is it true currently, if you're a homeowner, you get, first of all, I like the idea that you guys will have control of the RFIDs, but right now, each homeowner can get 2 RFIDs, and if they have more vehicles than that, they pay an additional fee? Is that right, Shannon?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
With a caveat,
with,
the notion of homeowner, if you look to who is the owner, in many instances, a deed will say it's a limited liability company. So that in part is why we're trying to dig into who the owner is for purposes of this policy.
so you're saying that if it's owned by 12 people, 24 passes could get, RFIDs could be given.
Possibly.
Sure, that's
Yes.
currently our system. Yes,
And-
ma'am.
And also, I know when I was on the Sandcast committee, they, a handful, quite a few, I don't know, added children to their deeds.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that they could get, and those people also get an RFID?
If they are on the deed
If they're
or
on the
part of
deed.
the trust or LLC, they are treated as members. Yes, ma'am.
So that just shows that that happened even with the Sandcastle guest, so that they could come in without the owner, has already happened. So it seems like your discussion of, how many passes per household, it shows that people already are taking advantage of adding more people to their list so that more can get RFIDs. So just thinking of that. And then it doesn't apply to commercial, to the resort or the partners as far as number of passes they can give. You just give them out if they want them.
No, no,
Yeah, well, that's what I
So-
wondered.
it's a different
Not at all.
concept.
Okay.
They have guests and they're entitled to have guests.
Oh,
And
yeah,
as-
not
No,
guests,
no,
I'm talking
actually,
RFIDs.
I don't think we give any RFIDs.
We don't give
We give them to the
RFIDs.
to their employees and other commercial service providers. So employees, yes. Club members off island, no, not as it's written.
Okay, but because, well, resort's different because they are
Yeah.
members of the
Yeah, so all their
association.
employees will get RFIDs, but none of the hotel guests.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But the number of vehicles they can have, I mean, if we're trying to think about how many vehicles are going through, that's not limited at
is
all.
No.
No, ma'am.
And then we don't believe we can limit
Okay, all right, thank you.
as written. So anyone else in the room? David?
Dave DeStefano, 31 Burrows Hall. Looking at the big picture, and I've mentioned this before, the primary reason for having the first gate is to maintain the privacy of the island. That's number one. Number two is controlling the people that come in. And I was on the board for 6 years. This issue's been with every board. Before I was on the board, 6 years, and here we are again. And I think the issue that has caused all of this is people complaining about people getting on the island that shouldn't be on the island without passes, okay? I don't know what data we have. I've got 2 data points that were brought to the board's attention while I was on it about how many people show up at the front gate without a pass. One was the year 2021, 14,000 vehicles showed up with nothing. Okay. Over 2 million vehicles went through the gate. It's a very, very, very small percentage. some of those people are legitimately here. Maybe they did go to the resort. Maybe they were playing out. We don't know. The only other data point we had, Labor Day weekend of 2024, not one person showed up without a pass in that 3-day period. So what problem are we trying to solve? It's pretty much people that are getting through that shouldn't be getting through.
I disagree.
No, that is not the problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, I disagree. So are you saying that you think we're fine the way everything is now?
No, no, not at all. It's just that, you know, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And how do we solve it?
Part of it is what they brought up, which is having a, you know, if Dwight were here, he'd say security. Like if we found cars in someone's driveway, we know who, how they got in, who let them in,
Right.
what their driver's license is, what their license plate is. We give all that to the police. And if they had a sponsor on the island, we can, you know.
No, and I understand it, but one of the things that we regulate vehicles, we don't regulate people.
Mhm.
Okay, so if a drywall contractor has an RFID on his van and they're driving in, we don't know who's coming in. We don't have a clue.
So
That's
what
correct.
change would you make to this policy?
I think all of the stakeholders, obviously the commercial people, et cetera, have to come up with it. And I think what you're working on is a way to make sure that people that show up are they have a legitimate pass.
Yeah, and we do that
Right.
now. Shannon
Now,
has,
now, one of the things that you did put in there, that I brought up before is multi-day passes of people that are gonna stay overnight. Whether it's at the resort, whether they're, renters or staying. So I know there are many, many people that get 30-day passes every 30 days. There are people at Seabrook that get it. There are people that don't live here on the island, but, you know, they were governed, whatever, they get it, okay? There's a group of people that's not being addressed here. It is the Keel River Associates with the Governor's Club passes. If they have to get a day pass every day, it's gonna overwhelm our front gate, okay? Because they're in and out playing golf all the time.
so let me
We're
ask.
working on that.
So you think, well, so in implementation, we will deal with the crowds, but from a policy standpoint, you think they should have unfettered access?
No, not at all.
What access should they have?
Well, a Governor's Club member has access to the
The club, but
resort's
what
property,
access should they have to Kiwa?
just to use the roads to get.
As much
to
as
it.
they want.
Well, now we get into, they're a resort guest, so
Yeah.
if that's one thing about Governor's Club members that don't live on the island, they are resort guests. So that's its own special category that has to be
Yes,
dealt
so
with.
what should we do with them? I mean, this is why we're having this meeting. We made a proposal. What should we do different?
I think people that are gonna come here anyway, that are, shall we call it permanent resort guests?
Mhm.
For instance, we gotta talk about the future of Orange Hill, that's a whole other issue. Is, for instance, somebody at Keel River Estates, maybe you should consider giving them RFIDs. Maybe they should be giving us RFIDs because we have to get into their property, okay?
Why do we have to get in their property?
Well, they got a gate.
It's open.
It's open.
Well, it's always,
It's
I mean,
open.
but, okay, when it works. when it-
Theoretically.
No, but this is what we've been wrestling with. And I
Yeah.
think this is the feedback.
But if we get into the situation of telling them, you have to get a pass every day you're coming on the island, they could do the same thing to us
They could.
and say, okay, I want, you know, the blitz is on Wednesday. You know, how many people, there's 60, 70 people that are gonna be calling for day passes out there. So it's, you know, we don't have a crime problem. We're not worried about the people. You know, we're keeping track of vehicles. And there's so many different stakeholders that, the idea that if you go to multiple day pass, you have to stay on the island overnight, that's big.
I'm not sure that's where we're headed. We're trying to work with Roger and his team to implement
Right.
an interactive IT, you know.
Right. But I mean, if somebody's coming to the sanctuary for 7 days, they're getting a 7-day.
Oh,
pass.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
of course.
My concern is that, let's say, my nephew was in the Air Force at Charleston, okay? I theoretically, I could have just every 30 days issue him a pass so he can come to the beach. I didn't do that because it's improper. If he was coming to stay with me for a weekend, I'd call in a 3-day pass for him. Otherwise, just day passes. So you changed the 30 to 14, but there's an implication, and I think it should be a little more firm, that if somebody's getting a 14-day pass, they're staying on the island. for
Well,
14
so
days.
that's very hard to enforce.
I-
But to your point, so if we have all that data and it is computerized, we can run a report that says how many people gave someone a pass for more than, 60 days a year. And you pull it up and you see David Stefano, every month he gives the same person a pass.
Right.
You're gonna get a phone call if we're doing our
Right.
job.
Well,
So-
the thing is that I know that's happening now.
You're right. And we need a
Right.
system so we can get reports and we can try to address this
And
situation.
right now, part of the issue is we have multiple stakeholders issuing multiple gate passes, and we're
Right.
trying to bring that under the auspices of a single issuance. So, we're trying to work with Roger. His clientele absolutely have a right to get on the island, and they have a right to access pretty much all of the island to get to his properties.
Right.
So within that universe, we're trying to figure out, is there a way if one of his guests parks at an HOA parking lot, is there some way, and that's what we're trying to
Right.
implement, so that we will know who's on the island. We can't restrict his guests because he has a right, but we need to understand who belongs where. And right now, there's no way to do that
Well,
unless,
But I'll finish with this. It's the who. We keep using the word who.
well,
We don't.
no.
it's What vehicle?
That's right.
right.
And that's, and I hate to say it, but we're not going to force everybody to get out of their car and give us their, so get over that. But if a bus shows up to the gate and the bus has a pass, we're not going to tell everybody to get out of the bus and tell us who you are.
But we do know who gave them the pass, who they are, what their license plate is, who gave them the pass. And if they're doing it every month, we can
Okay.
find them.
So now the issue
Fine,
is,
not fine.
now it goes to enforcement.
Hmm.
And I know that for regimes, for instance, they have to do their own enforcement, which is almost impossible. So the enforcement aspect of it is, what can our security people do when they're driving around and they look at a vehicle and they see a pass and they say, that person should not be here? Okay?
Well, I think down the road, if we got all this working and we can identify those people, then it's up to a board to decide, can we fine, can we tow, can
Right.
we do nothing? I agree, all that has to roll out, but it's like, we just need a place to start.
This is the first step.
I know, I understand that, but, what I see so far is, I think it's pretty good.
Thank you,
Oh,
thank you.
thanks,
But you hit probably one of our most difficult items right
Yeah.
now is the permanent guest. And I would say a lot of the feedback we've gotten by email addresses that. Some people think they should have unfettered access. Others want to see a complete clampdown. I think even some of your comments indicated that you think it should be a tighter gate and you're making the case for a wider gate. And that's what we're wrestling with.
I have visited the community before. Everybody in the car had to show an ID, one pass, but everybody has to show their driver's license or some form of ID.
We'd need 12 lanes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not
I'm
gonna
just
do
saying, I
that.
have been
You
there.
would need that.
I don't think we're wanting to go there yet.
Yeah, we're not crazy,
No,
but we think that we're upping the game a little bit.
we're up in the game. And
So-
like you
Dave, the
said,
other thing that you brought up that we are constantly struggling with is off-island club members, whether it's the Keel Island Club or the Governor's Club. That's something we have to resolve.
And they are stakeholders. So the resort, they're stakeholder. So is the Key Island
I know.
Club. So
I kind of keep track of what's going on. I know the resort has presented their easement, which is pretty clear.
Yeah.
And the partners are claiming similar easement rights, but they
we,
haven't.
we haven't seen.
We're
that.
not, but
So-
to be fair to everyone and anyone who's watching, we're not stopping anyone from getting on the island. All we're talking about is fast pass versus normal pass. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah,
And fast pass is not an unoriginal concept in this
So,
country.
so right now, with this policy in place, Orange Hill, without anything else, they're gonna have to get a daily pass. So,
Now, just at one of our executive board sessions, I might have been before you were on, I'm not sure, Kevin. The issue came up when we first heard the word Orange Hill. It's probably 5 years ago. At the meeting, it was, what are we gonna do about that? And kind of the board kind of unanimously said, the best deal you're gonna get is the secret. Okay? But that's the last one. And the email said, we can't agree to that because we have other properties. That's it. I don't know what other properties they're referring to,
Does,
but
I don't know if the former E-member wants to comment on that or. Yeah, oh, God, yeah, or if you knew the background, thank you. So, Yeah, I don't know. Is there still any member? I can't remember. Yeah. Yeah, ma'am, please.
Hi, I'm Joan Collar and native Glen. There's a couple of things that I think definitely affect our passes. And one is, first of all, I've been here since they built the second gate and all that. And the second gate was built, there was to be no commercial activity except for the resort and for the beach club. And no multiple houses, no condos, anything like that. Well, I have a list here of Airbnbs and a company called Inspirato that owns at least 13, probably more buildings beyond the second gate and before the second gate that are not privately owned. This is a international travel club, okay? And these people are given access to all resort activities. Okay, that's what they write up here. Okay. Okay. And I happen to be so fortunate to have two right within my walking, right in my community. They usually have 6 or 7 cars out there. They walk through my property. How and why are they there? This was not supposed to be part of KICA.
Someone may have told you that. I don't think our documents prevent that anywhere. that
Yeah,
I'm
but
aware of.
others do not, okay?
Yeah.
And you can go look up Inspirato and they'll send you a brochure of their hotels here.
Well, so the other issue is, do they have short-term rental permits through
Yes.
the town?
Yes.
If they do,
Yes.
then, they're operating the way they need
They're
to.
permitted
But why
to.
do they have one rule and we have another rule?
You have the same
Cars
They do.
not parked on the road,
So,
walking through people's private property.
It should be the same rules, whether or not they're being forced is an
Yeah.
excellent.
And
question.
what we're
Yeah.
trying to do is identify the cars that are parked in these locations so that we can then, if you say the next door neighbors who have a car with this pass, they're abusing my property, they're parking on the street, we would then be able to trace it back to the sponsoring owner and
Yeah.
then deal with the
Yeah, but
sponsoring owner.
Inspirato, I've seen these places being built. Who is it owned by? Inspirato, okay? A lot of them disguise it by private owners.
But I
So-
think we'll be in a better position with this policy because we'll have a name with every license plate.
and Joan, one of the other things that will happen that's in this policy is Inspirato is treated like a rental agency, like the other rental agencies out here. They are under a town business license for rental agencies. The town of Kiowa Island has a limit of overnight parking at any rental property. So one of the things that the board has said within this policy is they're going to tie the number of passes, overnight passes being issued to those properties to the town of Kiowa Island's overnight number. That should help to limit what's going on, what you're seeing at those homes with 6 and 7 vehicles that are parked everywhere. If the town has a limit of 4, what we want to do is tie those overnight passes together so that we're not issuing more than 4 overnight. Does that help?
Well, that would be good, but it still bothers me that we are allowing business beyond. At this point, I should not be paying another fee for a second gate because it has not provided my privacy.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for those of you that don't know, Joan is our Santa elf who does all of our Christmas decorations on the island. All the signs, all the mailboxes, she's done this for decades.
They love you,
Do you have
Joan.
any comments online?
We do. Ready?
Please.
Our first online guest is Donna Nicholson. Donna, you are unmuted on our end.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to join virtually. I'm an owner on Sea Marsh and a relatively new owner. So two things. One is there a redlined version of the proposed draft here that shows the difference from what's in place currently? Because as a new person, it's hard for me to really appreciate how this is different than what already exists.
I'll answer that. It's a radically different document and a red line just wasn't feasible. You know, we tried to
Okay.
keep it to 10 pages, but I think you have to start with the 10 pages fresh.
Okay, second thing is, does this address or does it or does it not address the social media instructions from people on how it's so easy to get on Kiowa? You just tell them that you've got a reservation at the restaurant, or you just tell them that in anything that might make sense and you can automatically just get on the island. Does this do anything at all to address that?
We hope it does, because anyone who just comes to the island will no longer be allowed or permitted through the gate. They will have to have somebody who's a sponsor, such as the resort, will call in a pass for them. And I would think that the resort, you know, if Roger, you want to comment on it, but they're going to be, I don't think they're just going to pick up the phone and write a pass out for anybody that calls, especially if they see it multiple times. But that's really all we can do, is to try to make them at least register and not just show up.
Yeah.
And we have to weigh that against Roger's interest in driving traffic through his pro shops and his restaurants. So, you know, we're very sensitive to the fact that we can't just have a black and white, you can't do it. So, you know, we're trying to work with Roger and his team. We believe that our, you know, computer folks can come up with a solution, but we're trying to address that.
Yeah, it'll take time. Like, this policy will set the goal, and then we're trying to improve the electronic experience. So people who legitimately need to be here can go online, register, and obtain a pass. Go ahead, Roger. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. We're working against two dynamics here. First of all, the business dynamic of the resort is we want as much business as we can get, but we also want to be a good neighbor. I like the fact that somebody online is talking about coming to Kiowa to buy something, but I want them to buy something and not just use it as an access, an entree onto the island. We don't support that. So we're working with Shannon and her team to create an opportunity for anybody who wants to come and legitimately use our facilities, that they'll have to have contacted us through our website, through a portal. They can do it, that they'll get the same kind, whatever we end up determining is the process that we're going to use when we give them a pass, or we let you know, so you give the pass at the front gate, which I think is what we're leaning toward right now, that everybody who gets on the island that says they're going to the resort will have that pass to go to the resort. But I think sometimes people forget, though, that we have buildings everywhere on this 10-mile long island. We have restaurants everywhere. We have access points to the beach everywhere. And we've talked about this before. We, as members of this organization on this island, don't own the beach. The state owns the beach. And you cannot, the public has access to every beach in South Carolina. We don't have to give them, they cannot be allowed or won't be allowed to go onto a beach from a private boardwalk or a private walk. So if it's designated as that, they cannot go to the beach there and say they have access. Our accesses from our buildings aren't private, they're public. And so we'll have people that routinely come to our parking lots at our businesses and have gone and shopped somewhere, maybe had lunch somewhere and decide they want to go out and walk on the beach. That's going to happen. This process isn't going to stop that. But then I guess.
And they're your legitimate guest.
Pardon me?
They're your
yeah,
legitimate guest.
This is doing.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with any of that. I just had a concern that people were using a simple statement to gain access to the island who didn't have planned access or permission to be on the island. I am in no way trying to suggest that we need to hamper the commercialization and the opportunities for growth and sales and use of the restaurants or anything like that. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with people telling stories and
So do I.
and
So do I.
And
getting
I
on
think,
the island.
we think this addresses that. They will have to have a
Okay.
legitimately registered with the resort to gain access.
And I do believe
Or
it
the
was happening before, because between the two of us, we didn't really look at it and deal with it at that point, but we will, and we'll get it done.
Okay, that's all I was asking. Thank you very
And
much.
to the resort's credit, I mean, we had a few years ago, they built a beautiful playground in Night Heron and it had every mother blog in Charleston, and all of a sudden people were coming to the playground. And so we immediately talked to the resort and they locked down Night Heron Park, how people were gaining access for Night Heron Park, because they want their beautiful playground for their legitimate guests, not for everyone in Charleston.
As well as we've done with
Yes.
all of our fireworks shows.
Yes.
4th of July and all that. Used to be. you had to go out to
Completely
Kyoto for
open.
Fireworks, and we don't let them, we tell them now we don't want them through the gate unless they have a pass to be here as a guest.
Correct.
We understand what the issue is.
Mm-hmm.
Still have issue with some of the solutions that we want to talk through. And I think primarily the one that sticks in my mind right now is Oak Point and access
Governor's
for
Club.
Governor's Club members at Oak Point. And I agree with something Dave said, to try to do a day pass for the members, Governor's Club members to go over there, or from there to go over here, to have to get a day pass wherever they get in, is one, it's gonna create a backup at the front gate. It's just gonna happen because of the way it's gonna work. Secondarily, I would encourage all of you who are Governor's Club members, who play in Governor's Club events, that you could be playing in an event that your neighbor and your fellow member is that you're supporting a policy is gonna make it harder for them to enjoy their membership by having to get a day pass to come over. I understand the need to control who goes through the gate, to understand who they are, but these are your neighbors and fellow club members who would be appearing to carry a burden of a policy that we all agree with, but they're gonna have to carry the burden of it, which I frankly think is unfair and would like to consider something different so that they have access as Governor's Club members. And we will take a responsibility too to help them understand that this is a special deal they have. And it's important that they not abuse it. So I would ask you to consider that.
So Roger, could I just ask a question? Because I think you touched on something that is very relevant when you said your neighbors. From my perspective, all of our neighbors are people who live on Kiowa Island. Where I think I have a problem, and where I think other members of Kiowa have a problem, is when our neighbors are defined to be either members of the Kiowa Island Club or Governor's Club members who don't live on the island. So the issue that I think is relevant and that I think we are trying to deal with are non-resident members of private commercial clubs.
And
That's not what this policy is dealing with.
Oh, no, this deals with that direct.
It does deal with that particular issue, but it doesn't deal with the everyday reality that we have dealing with people we know, dealing with people. So they live over at Kiowa River Estates. We know who they are, and they play golf with you every day. They play tennis with you. They're in a club that, well, all of you except one at this table are a member of the Governor's Club. So they're your fellow members on that club.
Right, but Roger, those individuals who live there don't pay assessments.
We pay it for them.
And that's the question.
They're our guests. We pay $1.3 million
I
a
think
year to
you just
cover
hit
their
on it.
access.
so when we talk about your situation, I think we have to put you in a different bucket than Kiowa Island Club, because you have a very substantial agreement that's out there that gives you certain rights that other people don't have. So what we're trying to do is treat everybody as similarly as possible, given your rights. And to the extent that we're dealing with KICA, they have an agreement. So we have to deal with them
Right.
differently than we would deal with Orange Hill.
That's what makes leadership difficult. Is that
Or fun.
it's not
Quandaries.
black and white. They have to make adjustments. And as you said, as you go along, you find out what works and what doesn't work. If we're all on the same page about what we want to accomplish and what the problem is, and you talked about it, Kevin, coming in, the problem can't be that we've got people that we don't want to have on our island. Because they're always going to be able to get on the island, Paul. They can be our guests. They can always have access and be our guest.
And Roger, I have no issue with that.
I mean,
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like that.
No, you know what it really boils down to is convenience. There's nobody that we're stopping getting on the island. The question is what is the price of convenience, which is the right lane, which is the RFID. And I think that, let's face it, that's it. I mean, we all want, as owners, to whip through that lane. We want the people coming to work at our house to whip through that lane. We don't think we want everybody to whip through that lane. And that's the problem we're trying to solve. It is convenience, and what is the price of convenience? Do the people who live here and pay assessments deserve greater convenience than the people that don't?
I agree. I understand
so-
that. And I would say that the day pass interferes with that.
Yeah, it's inconvenient.
Interferes with that because of the current setup. If you were at the point, we've been able to get to the point that we evolved to 3 lanes coming in and a pass gate outside of the front gate, all of that's possible. But we're trying to do this part of the step without the other
Well,
steps.
no, we're not. No, just to be clear on implementation, we think all Kiwa residents and all service providers can be on the Kiwa system within weeks or months. That's pretty easy. Guests, whether they're your guests, the club guests, my guests, that is a bigger challenge. We've said many times, we think it's going to take our staff maybe as many as a few years to get that fully implemented. You know, to work. So we're like, if we pass this tomorrow, you're not going to see a change the day after tomorrow. Just so we're all clear and everyone online.
Don't whisper sweet nothings in my ear. I'm too old for that.
Well, I'll be gone in March, Roger. So then but I think that the goal is that we don't shock the system. We can everyone who lives on the island and does work, that's going to be a quick change. Guests are we've broken it down to just guests, and that's going to take longer.
Thanks.
Anyone else online?
You do. Rick Papillo. Rick, you are unmuted on our end.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Rick Papillo, 462 Vetch Court. I'm also a member of the Safety and Enforcement Committee. Thank you to all the board for working on this. It's way overdue, and I really applaud you guys for working on it. I have one question. I have a lot of little detailed questions, but I have one for this meeting, which is, have you thought about what the measure or measures of success will be so you know the new policy is working?
Well, number one, I'll say no increased backup at the gate, which goes back to my last comment about long and structured implementation. Number two would be to not get any more complaints that anyone who wants to can walk up and get in the island. And number three is that we're adequately distributing the economic costs, whether we add fees to this, like once we get everyone in their right lanes, who should pay fees, who shouldn't, who's getting on the island that paid for it and who's not. So, you know, it's economic, security, and proper implementation would be the three off of my head.
And I would add one in terms of the enforcement issue. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we have enhanced technology, for example, license plate readers and mobile devices that connect to license plate numbers, we can do a better job of enforcing rules about people parking in parking spaces that they shouldn't be parking in.
Mm-hmm.
Including your driveway.
Yes. And I think that at the end of the day, I know that you get surveys all the time, and you know that one of the top issues is about this. And I would want to make sure, because I'm on the side of, I think we have a too loose of a gate, and that's why you're working on it. But how do you help all of us who feel very strongly about that at the end of the day to say it is better tighten up? And you don't need to give me the answer today, but I think for everybody, it's important to be able to have, here's the problem statement. And I know Roger mentioned it a minute ago. Here's the problem statement, and here's how we know we fix it with what we're proposing. Simple as that. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Point.
We have one more, Kevin,
Sure.
Sandy Devine. Sandy, you're muted on our end.
Hi, this is Sandy Devine. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I'm at 383 Green Wing Teal. I really do applaud the work that goes into this. I know how difficult it is with all the variations of the cases. I think whoever stated the what people are after as the right lane to be able to speed through and the convenience factor, I think that describes it well. I just want to present that I have local kids that live in the area, and I really prefer not to have to be constantly issuing them passes. And I also don't at this point want to add them to my deed. I don't know if there's a way to think about that. It's probably not as prevalent a use case as some of the stuff that you've been talking about. Although I have talked to a lot of people here on the island that also have kids that have moved to Charleston and live in the area. So that's my main point of feedback. But overall, I commend you for trying to narrow the problem, define the problem, and approach it in kind of a logical, sequenced way.
Thank you, Sandy. Do you think every 2 weeks to call in a renewed guest pass is too often?
I don't, but subject to the conversation you just had about sort of repeat, prolonged passes. And look, people drop in. So they consider this their home, or an extension of their home. So I'm sure there are solutions there, but I just wonder if perhaps one of the solutions is recognizing, local area adult kids.
And I think we are very conscious of that. I think most of us have children that visit us, and I don't think we want residential property owners to be restricted in how often their family and friends can come visit them. That's important to me, that we don't restrict that.
Sandy, one other comment. You said, so people can whiz through the right lane. I'm hoping at the end of 2 years, we're whizzing through the left lane.
Yeah.
Both, because ideally, everything can be done electronically in advance, whether it's registering with Roger or you logging into the KICA system. And for those people that just won't go online, they can go down the street to Beach Walker or wherever we can find space for a gate pass office. So ideally, even if we had 3 lanes, at least 2 of them are just fly through, do not stop. You have no option to stop. That's the long-term goal, because I was places this weekend where 2 lanes, people pouring through, but they were all permitted. And then if you're not permitted and you haven't taken the time to get yourself permitted, you have to go down somewhere else. But that's a multi-year goal.
Right. Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone
Thank
else in
you.
the room, please?
Hello, my name is Megan Howard. I'm the manager for KICA. So just 2 questions. I understand that under this policy, the access or toll fee clause would not apply to KICA.
Correct.
The existing access fee that you currently charge is what you intend to apply.
Correct.
So under this existing agreement, the administration of the decals would not be applicable in this case, though?
No, I think they have to come from KICA. If you want to step into the middle of it and hand them out and administer them with your staff, I think we talked
So
about that.
we did talk about this with Jordan in one of our meetings. Prior to 5 years ago, KICA used to issue the decals for KICA. And we said to Jordan, look, we're fine issuing the decals for KICA. We're 2 miles down the road. The KICA owners can come here. We have office hours here, and we're fine to do that for you. That was one of our comments to him. But yeah, your agreement stands.
And let me point out one thing. 2001, I think, to 2020-ish, what I've understood, that's how it was done. And at some point, we turned over pass and
We changed it with the club.
The club started
systems.
creating its own system, which we found has not worked out well. So we're going back to one central system. But if you want to step in and administer, I mean, that's one thing, but there'll still be KICA passes off our records and off our system.
And RFID is an RFID.
Yeah, and we can work out how that works. We just made the offer that, we can issue them.
Okay.
Or we can do it in conjunction with you, so.
Yeah.
And to clarify for anybody who doesn't understand, KICA has a special agreement so that we're not giving them anything that they're not otherwise entitled to by way of not charging them through the gate. There was an agreement that was entered into what was it, 2000,
Yes.
which essentially guarantees that the CACIC members, all of the homeowners within CACIC, if they pay, well, they have to pay a 50% of our assessment, they in turn get the right to come through our gate. So, you know, when you.
With an RFID.
With an RFID.
Correct.
With an RFID, so that everybody understands we're not cutting special deals. This is something that we're faced with. and we're dealing with.
25 years ago.
We
25
aren't
years
now.
ago.
So we're
So,
like 15.
yeah, so
Now, is the intention to charge their guest? I don't know how guest access would work. No, that's good.
So
Right.
within your agreement, it says the
Yes.
CACIC members and guests have access. And we were talking about this earlier and we didn't include the CACIC guest within here.
That's why I figured I'd ask.
Right, and
Yeah.
so I have actually a note to myself to add the CACIC guest in here.
Now, I would say that if we started charging guest fees for everyone who's a KICA member, it would be applied to CACIC as well. Because I think it says you'll get the same terms that KICA members get.
Yes, as far as the issuance of decals, we would issue them. as-
Or guest fees or
according to
anything
your
else.
policy.
I think, or.
You have
anything
to be
else.
treated like a member.
Yeah, you'll be
Correct.
treated like. members.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I had.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone
Nice to
else
see you.
online? Anyone else in the room? Carol?
So could you talk a little bit about the system that you're going to implement to incorporate the technology part of it? No, you don't have any information on that?
Well, no,
That's fine.
here's what I'll say. We've said it's gonna take multiple years.
Okay,
Our staff, Jody's been working on this for 6 months.
okay,
We've put 100,000 in the budget to probably bring in a consultant to help us with this.
okay.
And we've been collaborating with the
And
resort.
we've been collaborating with the resort and we've had discussions with the club to try to put a lot of pieces in place, but we thought it best, create a policy so we know where the ship is sailing, and now we got to get the ship there.
yeah, our thought was if we wait for the perfect system, we'll never get to where we need to be. So we're implementing and then we're working on a parallel path for
Okay.
what system would work with our stakeholders so that we can.
Well,
make
and I
this
think
work.
that's important for homeowners, just for also enforcement of all these things you're changing. I mean, not, you know, that's important. So
Yep.
hopefully you can get going with it.
We have a new
Technology.
director of security coming on board that'll have some responsibilities.
I know, we
New
haven't even
responsibilities.
announced that. Would you like to announce that? You have a new director of security
I just
coming
said
on
they'll come
board.
eventually, so. No, I don't want, but at some point, there'll be a director of security that will have this responsibility.
I'd like to make one more request of this process right now. You've worked hard on it. You can see that, and we've had a lot of conversations and we see movement in, I think, in a positive direction. But I still think one of the missing elements of all of this is that we tend to react to what is anecdotal information rather than pure data, real data about, you know, for example, we're making a change to how people come out on a same day situation that they're saying that all you had to do is go to the gate. Well, there's got to be some way to track those people. And maybe it's been tracked and it's just never been amalgamated and looked at. But I think it's important to solve the problem, we got to understand the scope of the problem. And what is it going to take to get it to where you want it when you fully understand what the data says? Because I don't even understand exactly on some of the things that have been said. How much are we talking about? How many people do that? And I know Shannon did give me a number. We were asking about how many day passes we had, and I think it was 22 or 23. I don't remember what year it was. You threw it right off the top of your head.
I
so it
don't
was pretty
remember
good.
the number.
But it was about 40,000 of them in a year. But then when he started breaking it down to 365 days a year and 10 days or 10 hours a day or whatever, the number got down to when you'd say, well, do we really need to even change something for that low incidence rate, so to.
That
so
was to
speak.
David's comment too.
But that is one component of what we're trying to solve. There's a lot of
I
components.
understand.
Yeah.
That's just one example that I was trying to give.
Yeah.
All of this has been generated by members' concerns about it. There's too much of it. There's too many people parking in regime parking lots that have day passes that are going, well, we don't even know how many that is.
I don't agree with that. Like when you say all of this has been generated, I think we have security problems that people brought up. I think we have financial concerns about Orange Hill and other places, an unlimited number of.
I'll
people
give you
come in.
that.
But-
I'll give you
yeah.
that.
So
So
there's
there's
like,
a
there's
bad
probably
choice
like,
of words.
there's probably like 5 or 6
Yeah.
different problems we're trying to tighten up.
But none of them's got real hard data to talk about it. Because it hasn't been laid out. If you had it, you'd use it.
No,
Because it'd
well,
be a great tool to communicate.
that's our number one problem is without a central system, we really don't have control over it.
And that's
So
why
we-
we're supporting to get to that point so we can really make some good decisions for the future.
Yeah, we're not talking about a covenant change. And we talked about this earlier. I mean, if we get 3 years into this and electronically everything's working, there's no lines at the gate. I mean, a future board can adapt to the wants and desires of its members. But this is what we're trying to do to.
Well, and we recognize that all of the stakeholders need to be involved and the water level has to rise for everybody so that, you're a very important, component part to this island, which is a 5-star resort. And we get that. So we're trying to put in place a policy that gets all of us to a point where we're comfortable that that gate and people accessing the island makes sense.
I appreciate that. And see it. Thank you.
Because it's true that the resort is a benefit to all of us homeowners on the island. And we are never going to be like Seabrook. Our gate is never going to be the security that Seabrook Islanders have. We are a semi-private island at best. So it's just deceiving for property owners to assume that no one else is going to come here but people that own homes here. That's just never going to happen. That's not where you live. You live on a beautiful resort island with a beautiful resort. So we have to work together and to the benefit of both of us.
I'll summarize all my notes and you guys may have additional ones, but the main thing we're working through in the comments we got mostly relate to what I'll call day guests. Whether they be Governor's Club members, children, whether there's 20 to a property or one primary, it seems like everything revolves around day guest. And as we work towards passing this policy, that may be the place we look closest at. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you, everyone.